Communications Director for former Speaker Dennis Hastert, and Doug Thornell is a former spokesman for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and a Democratic strategist. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate it. So here was the slogan. I read it at the top, Ron. Renew, grow, and win. What's not included in that is change. And you're hearing a lot of Republicans are saying we don't need to change our message. We don't need to change our values. We need to change the way we deliver our message. What do you think?
Well, I think that, first of all, I need to commend RNC Chairman Reince Priebus for holding an excellent meeting in Charlotte where he unveiled this slogan, where he, unveiled what we need to be doing. And what we need to be doing is focusing on rebranding our party and growing our party. Right now, yes, the polls should, that's exactly where we're at. I mean, the president has won re-election, and now we need to move forward. And what we need to do is we need to unveil a Republican agenda that appeals not just to our base, but to everyone, to women, minorities, swing voters that we lost in the 2012 elections. And then we need to, have a presidential candidate eventually that does not just appeal to the wealthy, that appeals to everyone.
Doug, as a Democrat, I'm guessing none of this is really too concerning to you. You probably take a certain amount of pleasure in watching Republicans do this soul searching. But it wasn't too long ago that your party had its problems, and then Bill Clinton came along. And I'm wondering, if you were to give advice to your Republican friends and to Ron, would you recommend that Republicans take a page out of the old Bill Clinton playbook and maybe shift a little bit towards the center? Is that the answer, do you think?
Well, Ron's one of the best, so I'm not going to give him advice. But what I would say is I think that Republicans are actually learning the wrong lessons from the election. It wasn't that they had a bad messenger. Mitt Romney wasn't great, but that wasn't the issue. It wasn't the message. It was the policies. And the Washington Post had a poll recently that showed that the American people, by a 53% margin, believe that the Republican Party have the wrong policies for this country. And if you look at the president and you match him up against the Republicans on a whole host of issues, including Republican staple issues like taxes and foreign policy, he does better. So I think it's not enough to just go into communities that they've ignored or tinker with their message. I think they really do have to take a hard look at some of the policies they've embraced, such as something like self-deportation for immigration reform. I don't care how you spin that. Hispanics are not going to embrace you if you have a policy like that in your party.
Ron, what do you think?
Well, I got to tell you, I think President Obama is going to really help Republicans out because he's now unveiled a liberal agenda that, since he's being reelected, surprise, surprise, and Republicans will be able to contrast themselves as a much more centrist party than the president who's going way left. I think that, on issues like, on climate change, on spending, on, creating a culture of dependence on the federal government, I think those things we can help to drive a wedge between Senate Democrats who are in red states up in 2014. We can drive a wedge between them to focus first on getting back the Senate before we go after the presidency.
Doug, what about that? Because this was a president who, called himself a political pragmatist and ran as a centrist the first time around, and he even ran that way the second time around, or tried to. And then he gives this speech on Monday that totally sort of, rips the Band-Aid off and allows everybody to see him for who he really has been all along, which is a devoted liberal, a proud liberal. Does he help the Republicans moving forward, as Ron is suggesting?
Anyone who's followed the president knows that the issues he talked about in the inauguration are the issues he talked about in the first campaign and the second campaign. He's talked about climate change for some time now. He's talked about immigration reform. He's talked about strengthening the middle class. I mean, if those are liberal issues, then, I'll take them, because I think those are issues that actually the most of the country embrace. And so if people want to try to paint him as something that is far left, they're painting the most of the country as far left, because that's where the country is on a whole host of issues. When you're talking about, I'm not saying far left, but what I'm saying is on the issues he put out there: climate change, immigration reform, supporting a strong middle class. Those are things that the American people support, and those are things he has won twice on. So I think there's nothing new there.
Fair enough. Ron, is there a white knight for the Republican Party? We just heard a little bit from Bobby Jindal, and certainly there are other leaders in the Republican Party who have been speaking at the conference who would like to sort of see themselves as the savior here as we move towards future election cycles. Is it Bobby Jindal? Is it Congressman Ryan? Is there someone who can come out here and sort of turn all these things around for the GOP?
Well, I think there are several young leaders that are growing in our party, like the ones you've mentioned, including Senator Marco Rubio, that can really help us deliver the message. Absolutely. And you know what? Also, we have 30 governors right now. We hold 30 states. And if we have some of those governors come forward as well, I'm sure we'll have a great crop to pick from when it comes to nominating the president.
Doug, just real quickly, final word from you. Is there a Republican out there right now that you think Democrats would least like to face in a future presidential contest, someone that scares you?
I'll let them do their nominating, but I would just say if they're going to point to their governors, they've got actually some serious issues. Rick Snyder, Rick Scott, Tom Corbett, Nikki Haley, they're all below 40% approval rating. The only guy in a battleground state that they have that's actually doing decent is John Kasich, and he's at 42%. So I'm not sure if the model or if the people they should be following are their governors, because they're having some significant problems themselves.
Got to leave it there. Doug and Ron, thank you both. Nice to see you.